Hey there, Prayer Plant Girl here. You may recall that I lifted up my Amaryllis from out in my flower bed months and months ago and said, I'm just going to let them rest for a few weeks to a month and then I'll pot them up and have some blooms over winter. And I never got to the potting up part. So I just did that yesterday. I'd kind of forgot about them. We've had a busy few months here. They'd been sitting in a box in my plant room here, and I'd noticed they'd started to sprout, but they still had all the dead leaves and roots and everything on them, and they're looking pretty rough. But so yesterday I took a few minutes and I cleaned them up and I potted most of them up, and they'll still bloom in about 12 weeks, 10 to 12 weeks here. So they'll still bloom before I'm having much happening out in the yard, but so it'll still be nice to have them. And since they won't be blooming around Christmas and they'll be kind of close to spring, I had these little butterfly picks. So I thought I'd put those in there to use to tie a little piece of raffia or ribbon or something around to hold the bloom stalks up. And they're in nice heavy pots to help hold them up, because amaryllis can get quite large with several blooms on top, and they can get quite top heavy. So that's what I've done. So single larger bulbs, I put in just a terracotta pot like this. And then I had a few that are just young bulbs still. So I planted them up in groups like this and just put the ID tag in there. There's another one here, has 3 in it. This one I didn't bother putting a stake in, but there's enough of them here that I should be able to still tie a ribbon or some raffia around all those stems and just help them kind of support each other. They shouldn't be super huge and probably won't even bloom at this size. But I saved a couple just to show you. So if you received an amaryllis bulb for Christmas and don't know what to do with it, or if you're like me and you've had some kind of sitting around waiting to be dealt with and you just haven't gotten to them yet, this will be your chance to see what I do, and we'll just get them potted up and be late together. But they're still beautiful, and it doesn't matter what time of year they bloom. I mean, really, amaryllis naturally bloom in the summer outside. Just here in the cold parts of the world like I am in Saskatchewan, Canada, it's nice to have them blooming inside and just give you that little touch of flowers in the winter and the cold. So they're so easy to force indoors. And I force mine indoors all the time, and then I take them outside in the spring when it's warm enough past frost. I plant them outside if I don't forget about them in their pots. And then I just lift them up, bring them back in, force them again. Sometimes they bloom in the summer outside, sometimes they don't, but it just gives them a chance to get some good nutrients and sunshine, and then bring them in and get ready for a forced bloom indoors. So they're pretty tough bulbs that seem to be able to handle a lot. I've neglected mine a lot over the years, and they still seem to get blooming and do what I want for them with very little effort. So there's not a lot to know about doing amaryllis bulbs, and if you want something a little more in-depth, I do have lots of videos about it, but the main thing is not to plant them too deep and not to keep them overly wet. So I'm going to just put some just regular potting soil in here. You could mix a little perlite or grit in with it just to help good drainage happen, but I think it'll be pretty good, especially with the terracotta pots. They breathe very well. And then I just have my bulb here, and you can see I trimmed the roots down. I took off all the old leaves and just kind of cleaned up any of the really loose material around the sides, but that's all it takes. And I'm just setting it in. So you can see it's not in very deep. You only want to bury like 1/4 to 1/3 of the bulb with soil, potting mix. So then I just go around the edge, just kind of put a little bit in there. You can see they're starting to sprout and they weren't even in soil. So they'll do that for you without even having the soil around them. You could just set them on some pebbles in a pretty dish. Nice bright light, a little bit of moisture around the bottoms. I do find that it's easier to get a little root rot if you grow them that way than if you have some soil around them. You just have to be really extra careful not to get the water level up to the point of the bulb if you're growing them on pebbles. But it is possible, and they will grow and bloom for you. So I'm just packing this soil down here around that root zone and making a little bit of space so that I can put some water in there without dumping all the soil out. And then I thought I had a, there, ID tag. So I have 3 different varieties here. I have Apple Blossom, Nirvana, I think it's called, and Prancer. And I'm not even positive that's the varieties anymore. I've gotten tags and bulbs mixed around over the years, but I think that's what we're at now. I think I have them separated out into the right varieties, but once they bloom, it'll be a little easier to tell, but some of the red and stripy varieties can be harder to tell. The Apple Blossom is kind of a pale pink with white. It's a little easier to distinguish, but some of those red varieties are a little more difficult, for me at least. So it looks like I have 6, 7, 8 little tiny bulbs here from this size. There's a chance I'll get a little bloom out of it. This, I won't probably get a bloom, but just let it grow and keep getting stronger. So same thing, I'm just going to put mostly filled to the top with the soil here, or potting mix. With these little guys, I do tend to bury them a little bit more in the soil just because they don't hold themselves up as well until they get their roots going. So I tend to put just a hair more soil on them just to kind of keep them upright. I'm going to stick this in the middle before I get too much going on here. And I'll just try and get them. They can be fairly close together. Oh. Tuck one more in there. There, so I've just got them fairly tight, close together there. There is a little tiny gap. There might be 2 that are actually touching one another. And now, a little trickier with these guys not to get soil down on the necks of them, but if you can avoid that, that is the best. But just try and get some soil tucked in around them, just to kind of hold them in place. It's a new year, a new gardening season. I'm excited to get started. I've been making plans, figuring out when I need to get starting all of my different seeds that I've ordered and plan to grow. And I'll be sharing that with you very soon. But I wanted to get this job done, and I thought some of the rest of you might have, like I said, either received an Amaryllis for Christmas and not be sure what to do with it, or you're like me and you just were neglectful of it. You know, you get busy and maybe you just want to see that you're not the only one. So there, that's all of my Amaryllis planted up now, and they should bloom. Like I said, usually it takes about 10 to 12 weeks. So that's what I'll expect, kind of the end of March sometime is when I'll think I'll have some blooms. They're already throwing out shoots, so it might be a little bit sooner. I don't see any thicker. You can usually tell when the bloom stalk is coming up, it'll be a thicker, it still kind of looks like a leaf, but it's thicker. So I don't see any of those popping up yet, but being how far along the leaves are on some of these, I suspect the bloom stalks aren't far behind. So we might have blooms even sooner. Amaryllis just do what they want to do. You can see how some of them are really curved and bent. That's because they're very, very attracted to the light, and these are laying down in their little box. So they were trying to find the light laying down there because they were laying on the shelf behind me with the plant lights on. So now that they're planted, they'll straighten out and start going straight up to the light for me. And once they get a little more attractive looking, I can take them out, put them around my house, and enjoy them that way. But for now, I'm just going to keep them on the grow light rack here behind me. They can just grow on that way. When you're watering them, you just want to try and get the water down on the soil and make sure you're not getting it down in the layers of the bulb. So just make sure you're going down on the soil here. And they don't need a ton of moisture. Just to keep the soil, moderately damp. It's okay to let it dry out a little bit between waterings, but they will rot if they're too wet. So just give them a little bit of moisture. And right now, these I just potted. They don't have a lot of roots down in that soil, so they really don't need much, just maybe a little bit to kind of show the roots where the moisture is and get them going, but they won't need much until they're actively growing and those roots have really started to fill the pots. So thanks for coming along with me while I finished up this project that I've kind of forgotten about. And like I said, I'll be back very soon to let you know what I plan to be planting for seeds in January and what my plans are for the gardening season. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.